Our people have always been in tune with nature. So one example of this is a Francois Mackendal 30 years before the Haitian Revolution. Mackendal was a Maroon, a runaway slave in Haiti during the mid-18th century. And so he led a rebellion during that same time. Well, what was his main weapon of choice? Your boy was definitely poisoning folk, but where did he get this poison? Straight from Mother Nature. So he would sneak these plants in the drinks and the food of the slave master, and a lot of times it would cause rash, vomiting, diarrhea, you'd be running out the butt, or paralysis. Slightly off topic, but after Mackendal was betrayed by a black woman, he was burnt at the stake. But before he was burnt at the stake, he said, look, you can kill me, but I'm going to come back as a mosquito. Now, how many people you think died? How many Europeans you think died of yellow fever during the Haitian Revolution? So another example of this will be in Georgia during the 18th century. So them fools were so scared, they said, look, no enslaved person can teach another enslaved person about plant or herbal life.
Where you get your grills from?
I got them from Johnny Dang.
You lying?
Yeah.
Where you really get them?
Life expectancy in Jamaica or Haiti, for example, was often between 3 and 7 years. So once you arrived on the island, you were worked to death on average between 3 and 7 years. I mean, it's genocide. And so that was what contributed, the type of torture. Because the white population was so much smaller than, say, on mainland America, vis-a-vis the black population, the paranoia was worse, and therefore the types of punishment, the types of torture, the extremity of the slave regime was much more severe in the Caribbean.
Taking pregnant women, crucify them, split their belly open enough so they will have a game. People are gonna bet who's gonna die first, the baby or the mother.
The reason why there was more rebellions in Jamaica and in the Caribbean in general is a number of factors. One, conditions were much worse, and I don't say that in any way to denigrate or downplay how brutal conditions were in America, but we can see this from the fact that the slavery was so bad in the Caribbean that the populations were not even able to reproduce themselves. So constantly new populations had to be brought from Africa.
And one of the things they used to do is bury us alive on an anthill, leaving your head so that you would slowly get tortured to death by ants eating your skull.
First of all, let's be clear, the rebellions against slavery started in Africa. And the rebellions against slavery in Africa are probably the most under-discussed and underrepresented element of the whole history. Everyone tells you that Africans collaborated, which is true. What they don't tell you about is those Africans that rebelled. And in fact, scholars estimate now, that it has been studied thoroughly, that the rebellions in Africa alone, of which there were hundreds, prevented perhaps 1 million people from crossing the Atlantic.
Toussaint Louverture opened the pathway for freedom and independence. But the man who doesn't get enough credit for bringing the revolution to victory is Jean-Jacques Dessalines.
Two different characters, two different people who handle things differently. Two different spirit, I would say also.
Okay, let's talk about zombies, voodoo, Haiti, the US, why they're all related and why it's important now. Haiti became the world's first black republic after waging a successful slave rebellion against the French. This led to the country gaining its independence in 1804. A huge portion of Haiti's success in the slave rebellion is due in part to the ceremony that took place at Bois-Caïma, which is where the insurrection was planned and a voodoo ceremony ensued. When the US got word that Haiti wanted to war with France and now stood as an independent black republic, tensions were through the roof. There wasn't a single week that went by that didn't make mention of Haiti in the newspapers. Haiti was being discussed in every state congress. By default, Haiti became synonymous with rebellion and stood as a threat to white supremacy in the pro-slavery South. White America feared that Haiti's success would without a doubt inspire and give hope to an imagined future of emancipation and liberation for black Americans in the West, and this was an issue. Slowly over time, this idea of some sort of Haitian contagion among white Americans began to take root, and the US needed a way to dismantle that. And so it was during the US occupation in 1915 that Catholic and Christian missionaries made a concerted effort to demonize Haitian spiritual practices. One of the ways they chose to do this was by disseminating misinformation about Haitian voodoo. An American by the name of William Seabrook, who was there during the occupation, became very familiar with the concept of the Haitian zombie, which is basically the process of reanimating a dead corpse through ritualistic magic by a boko, or witch doctor. His discovery and research around Haitian voodoo would become the basis for a film that was released in 1932 by the title White Zombie. White Zombie is the first feature-length zombie film and is said to be the foundational framework for which all zombie movies were created after its release. White Zombie was America's first introduction to a bastardized fictionalized representation of Haitian spirituality. It served as a catalyst for the creation of more zombie films that were intentionally created to spread misinformation and light a flame to white America's worst fears around voodoo. American media also used this as a tool to further dehumanize and villainize black folk. In a lot of these movies, zombies are depicted as these vile creatures, skin usually on the darker side, if not covered by dirt, and white women were always the victims. American media went out of its way to paint Haiti as a savage, lawless, primitive land that was filled with nothing but evil, magic, and disease, hence my use of the term Haitian contagion. America understood the threat that Haiti posed and what it would mean for a society that thrived on white supremacy, as the French did. Now, my reason for bringing this up is that Haiti is still suffering from this stigmatization till this day. Even now, voodoo is still used as a scapegoat for Haiti's issues. There are Christian extremists who are on the ground seeking to rid Haiti of its spiritual practices. Again, till this day, these people claim that Haiti is suffering from poverty, disenfranchisement, and elemental persecution as a result of a pact they made with the devil. If there's anything I want you to take from this video, it's that since the inception of this Black Republic, the US has sought to destabilize the country through means of politics, economics, education, etc. The only thing Haiti is paying for is its liberation.
During Haitian slavery, only the French colonial masters were allowed to enjoy soup jumeau. After the Haitian Revolution ended on January 1st, 1804, Haiti became the world's first black-led republic. The soup came to represent freedom, emancipation, and independence.
Haiti liberated 5 South American nations, from Venezuela, Colombia, all the way down. We liberated also the entire island, right? The Dominican Republic didn't exist.
Not only did Haiti get their own freedom, and this is what was so dangerous to the white supremacists, Haiti helped other Latin American nations get rid of slavery. Like Ecuador, it stopped slavery in Ecuador. They helped them get rid of slavery. They helped Venezuela get rid of slavery. They helped the Dominican Republic get rid of slavery. So that was a big fear of all the other Western powers, that this nation of African warriors were stopping slavery all over the hemisphere. So this is
Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians are the Israelites.
What did I ever do to you?
Another story about spirituality, witchcraft, spirits, and all that. So, if I remember well, it was a French influencer that shared that story, or a friend told me that, or Twitter, I don't remember. But anyways, so a group of guys decided to go to a party, but unfortunately for them, the party was canceled. So they decided, let's just go to the club, So they go to the club, get lit, they're dancing, vibing, everything is great. And then one of them spotted, a pretty lady. Shawty was bad, and he went up to her, started dancing with her, chit chat, all that. Next minute, she's at their table, getting lit with them. Everything is great. The brother didn't fumble the bag, and he might hit. It's getting late, around 2:30, and then she goes, let's go to your place. He's like, say less. He dabs up, the homies, peace, left with the shorty. So he drove back home with shorty. They do what they have to do, adults business. Bro enjoyed it. I'm not gonna lie, it was probably one of his best nights out. They're done, she's sleeping, he's texting the bros, in the group chat and all that. They're hyping him up, and then goes to sleep. Next morning, he wakes up, she's not here anymore. You know how it goes. It was probably a one-time thing, but she left her jacket. So he was like, she was fine. Maybe I'm trying to see her again. And luckily, the jacket had, one of those notes with all the informations, name of the person, address, number. Some jackets are expensive, and some of them for nothing, aka Arc'teryx. Anyways, he tries to call the number, and it says, sorry, the number you tried calling is not registered, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, That's weird. When I get the time, I'll drop her jackets to her place and then maybe I'll see her again. 3 days go by. Wednesday was his day off, and so he decided to drop the jacket. He's in front of the house, knocks, trying to look good, and someone who looks like her mom answered the door. And she's like, hello, how can I help you? And he's like, oh, sorry, ma'am, I think your daughter forgot this at a party. He was not going to say she forgot it at his place. And out of a sudden, she goes crazy, like, why are you doing this? Who are you? Who are you? Acting game 0. So she goes, who are you? How do you know my daughter? What the fuck are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, sorry, ma'am, but I'm just dropping this off. That's it. And she goes, who are you? My daughter died 2 years ago. What the fuck are you talking about? Pardon? He's like, show me a picture. She shows him. It was her. Dead 2 years ago.